You're listening to the New Heroes of Old NovelCast, written and read by author Greg Bulmash. Season 1, Hell on $5 a Day. Episode 2. Chapter 2. Soul Surgery. Regaining consciousness in hard-fought steps, Alain came to realize that he could not move. He didn't open his eyes. He just lay there and breathed. The smell of the air was acrid, like he was downwind from a couple of factories with all smokestacks at full. Wiggling his fingers, tensing his muscles, he found he wasn't paralyzed. He was restrained, strapped to whatever bed he was in. He opened his eyes by degrees, letting them adjust to the light without necessarily letting anyone who might be in the room know he was awake yet. He listened for the sound of someone else breathing, but there was nothing. He was in a hospital room, but different than the infirmary rooms he and the hard cases had been in before. Before. His head pounded as he tried to recall what had happened. He let go of that and inspected the room as best he could, considering his limitations. At first glance, the windowless walls seemed to be cream-colored, but the unevenness of it made Alain think it might be whitewash that had yellowed in more places than not. Above his bed hung a single bulb without a shade. Its meager glow gave the impression it was waging a valiant struggle to hold on. There wasn't much else in the room, and Alain wasn't sure what there should be. Aside from the infirmary accommodations over the last week, he'd never been in a hospital room, and wasn't a big fan of the types of movies that gave you good looks at them. Best he could tell, the room's contents consisted of him, the bed, the light bulb, a sink, and those infernal straps. What had happened after the lights went out? There was the metallic sound, and was it a vampire? It ate the others. It apologized, and then... To his right, he heard the door open, and the clunks of plodding footsteps approach. A woman's face hovered over his, a suppurating wound where her left eye should have been, a layer of dried pus around the empty socket. The smell was revolting, and when a fly landed on the crust to take a walking tour around the socket, Alain nearly vomited. "Settle down," she barked. Her speech slurred, coming from a mouth that was missing half of its teeth and part of a lip. As her hand moved up, he saw a large syringe, the needle rusted and dull. "Just stay still," she said, bringing it down toward his throat. Alain tried to thrash, pinch his leg, avoid the approaching needle while he woke himself from this nightmare. The slow approach of the needle turned into a quick jab, darting down out of his field of vision. It caught him in the neck, just under his jaw, and he could feel the needle sink into his flesh, expelling its contents. He thrashed his head, jerking the needle out of the nurse's hand, and it waved from the point where it lodged in his neck, thrown side to side as he tried to fling it away. A coldness moved out from his neck, a deep chill hitting each muscle in its path, taking control away from Alain. He raised his hips, throwing the weight of his body against the restraints, his shoulders and head shaking limply, already caught in the grip of the paralysis. The cold worked its way into his stomach and down his legs, each muscle losing its tension and going flaccid as it chilled. Alain couldn't work his jaw to shout for help, and eventually his toes gave up the fight, the coldness suffusing his entire body. The nurse pulled the syringe from his neck, rolling his head to the side, his eyes staring at her midsection. At least from that viewpoint, she looked like a normal nurse, if you could ignore the blood spatters on her apron. "Don't worry," she said. "We'll be done with you soon, and then we'll send you home." "Done with me? Send me home now," his mind screamed as a dire sense of claustrophobia settled in. He was trapped in his body, unable to fight, unable to resist. All he could do was lay there and shout silently for release as the nurse walked to the door, opened it, and made a gesture to someone standing outside. She was followed in by two orderlies pushing a gurney. The orderlies looked normal. There were no open wounds, major sores, or rashes, but it was no comfort to Alain. The fact that they released his restraints was of no comfort to him either. They did it because they didn't need them. He was helpless. "No!" he protested as they lifted him, limp as a boiled carrot and seeming to weigh as much as one, dumped him on the gurney, and wheeled him into the hallway. "Let me go! Let me go! Let me go!" He paused for a mental breath and pleaded as loud as he could think. "Please!" The gurney was jarred momentarily as he passed through a set of swinging doors, and then it came to a halt. Two pairs of hands grabbed him again, hoisting him from the gurney onto another table, and a bright light was pulled into place over him. "Patient's name?" he heard a male voice ask. "Boudreau," the nurse replied. Alain could feel his soul shivering, as if the cold from the shot had not only worked its way through his muscles, but through every part of him. He had never wanted anything worse in his life than to be out of there, to be somewhere safe. "Yes," the male voice said. "Vampire, 5 a day. Well, let's get cracking. I have to get back to torturing the wife." Two other voices laughed in response. Alain concentrated all his efforts on moving. He had to get up, get out of there. And as he felt the cold metallic touch of a knife against the skin of his upper abdomen, his panic kicked into overdrive. He could almost feel his brain hurt as he desperately tried to get some message from it to his muscles. The knife bit into his flesh. Starting just at the very bottom of his rib cage, the knife dug deep and Alain felt it all. The intense pain leaving no doubt in his mind that this was absolutely real and there would be no waking up from it. Though he showed no outward sign, he redoubled the struggling within his mind, frantic to stop this. Sawing through muscle, skin, and whatever else got in its way, the knife cut slowly downward. Alain couldn't scream, couldn't even grit his teeth as he looked up into the light. But through the haze of pain and fear, something screamed for his attention. What the doctor was sawing through had to contain some veins, some arteries. But oddly enough, though Alain felt the pain, he didn't feel the blood. It should have pooled out onto his skin, run down the sides of his stomach, pooled under his back. But there was no dampness, just pain. When the incision had been cut to about 5 inches long, the knife was withdrawn, and metallic clamps were attached to the sides of the incision, stretching it open. Prayer was no use. He couldn't scream, he couldn't even cry in frustration. He could just lie there and be hurt. The light dimmed for a moment, and Alain felt a surge of relief. If he couldn't escape, the least his brain could do for him now was make him pass out. Sadly, the surgery continued. The pain continued, and the light came back. Then it dimmed again. The dimming had come from a blink. His muscles were frozen, but Alain realized he was still breathing. He still unconsciously blinked. That meant some signals were getting through from his brain. Concentrating, he tried to take control of those muscles. A hand entered the hole in his stomach, going in at an angle up under his rib cage near the diaphragm. Alain tried to tune out the pain and slow his breathing, exerting all his effort in taking a deep breath. Slowly, he inhaled, and when his body wanted to exhale, he applied his mind to making the lungs take in more air. His breathing paused, and then a small gasp of air was added before his lungs pushed the air out. His concentration was disrupted by the hand inside him. It had found what it was groping around for. The pain was intense as the hand gripped it and started pulling. He wanted to grit his teeth against the pain, but he couldn't. All he could do was concentrate on taking in another slow, deep breath, trying to blink his eyes while he did. He achieved both. "Yeah," he shouted in his mind. It wasn't much, breathing and blinking when he wanted to, but it was a start. Whatever the hand it gripped was slowly being pulled out of Alain, being forcibly uncoiled from within him and dragged into the open air. The progress was slow, a man's voice grunting slightly. Whatever it was inside him that they were trying to remove didn't want to come out. Breathing deeply again, Alain could feel his muscles warming. Tentatively, he tried to move a finger. The finger jerked, then slowly curled up under his palm. He brought up two at once next, then made a fist, rotating it ever so slightly at the wrist. The doctor lost his grip on whatever he'd been pulling, and a length of it shot back inside Alain, making a slurp noise. "Son of a bitch," the doctor cursed, catching it with a grunt. Now that Alain had gained some control of his body, the pain was more intense, but he wasn't frightened, and he was breathing deeply. That made all the difference, the cold in his muscles dissipating. He gradually gained control, concentrating on each major muscle, gently clenching and unclenching it a couple of times before moving on to the next. He left his mouth open, resisting the impulse to grit his teeth. With a final grunt, the doctor yanked on whatever they'd been pulling out of him. "Cut it," he said. The strand was snipped near the incision, and the remainder of it retracted into Alain's body like a rubber band that had been snapped. With all the energy and control Alain could muster, he brought his legs back quickly and kicked out against the operating table, sending himself sliding off backwards. He didn't have as much control as he thought, and an attempt to swing himself so he could land on his feet ended up with him rolling off and falling onto the floor with a body-quaking thud. But Alain was back on his feet quickly. The operating room was staffed by a doctor, the nurse, and one of the two orderlies. On a gurney at the foot of the table lay what they'd taken out of him, a pink mass, almost like intestines, but it was melting and flowing, not off the gurney, but upward and outward, squirming and undulating as it began to take on a shape. "What the hell is that?" Alain shouted. The nurse went running out of the operating room as the orderly started advancing on Alain. The doctor, on the other hand, stood by the undulating pinkness. He had that sort of unflappable self-confidence most often displayed by politicians and other fools who think that they are too important for someone to take a swing at them. "It's your soul, of course," the doctor said, "or at least part of it." As they circled, Alain saw two things. First, the pink mass was stretching and flowing into a vaguely humanoid shape, though it was still very blurry in child size. Second, he was approaching the instrument tray. "SOP," the doctor blathered on, oblivious to the explosive nature of the developing situation. "You think you'd get all that power without a little collateral?" Closer to him than to the orderly lay a bone-handled knife he assumed had been used as a scalpel. Alain decided there was no time like the present to see how coordinated he could be. He leapt forward, grabbed it, and leapt back, holding it in front of him defensively. "Get back," he said to the orderly, taking up a fighting stance, holding the knife ready to strike. The orderly stopped but didn't back away. He looked at Alain, then at the knife, and chuckled. Meanwhile, the mass on the gurney was getting more distinct. Rather than sprout arms, the pink material flowed off of what could be a torso, defining the arms, slowly splitting them away. As they separated from the mass, they curled up over its chest and it rolled up into a fetal position, issuing a high-pitched moan from its forming mouth. Noticing Alain's distraction, the orderly moved closer. "Get back!" Alain yelled, taking a swipe at the orderly. But rather than jump back, the orderly stepped into the blade's arc, letting it draw a path across his stomach, tearing through his shirt and cutting a shallow wound in the flesh. He stopped and cringed, obviously feeling it. But he didn't bleed. Alain stepped back, panicked by what he'd just seen. To Alain's right, another orderly burst into the room and approached from the other side. Amidst all this, the doctor hadn't left his spot, watching the proceedings with a detached amusement. "If you two can hold him," the doctor trailed off as he prepared a syringe. The two orderlies continued their advance. Better than being caught between two of them, Alain knew he had to rush one. He chose the one to the right, between him and the door. Stutter-stepping forward, he stopped, pivoted on his right foot, and moved forward at a 45-degree angle to the path, leading directly toward the orderly, avoiding the orderly's grab for him. Raising his arm as he twirled, he put his weight behind the knife, slashing it across the orderly's throat, and came out of the twirl, heading backward into the swinging doors. Dropping the knife, he grabbed the cart with the pink, moaning mass on it and dragged it with him as he burst through the doors into the hallway. His hold on the cart kept him from falling over as he backpedaled through the doors, but the cost of that came quickly, the cart adding its weight to his as he slammed into the wall on the other side of the hall. Alain pushed off quickly and charged off to his right, the cart careening ahead of him. As he ran down the hall, searching for an exit, he realized what kind of sight he must be. A naked man running through a hospital, pushing a cart with what was now looking to be a moaning naked boy on it. He knew if he didn't get out of there quickly, he could expect police at every exit. And if he didn't get some clothes, he couldn't expect to get very far even if he did get out. Turning a corner, he slammed open the door of the first room he saw. It was empty. He turned and ran farther down the hall. He would have expected to be challenged by this point, at least seen some other nurse or patients in the halls. Reaching another room, he threw the door open, but the room was empty. It seemed almost as if he was the only patient on the floor. At the end of the hall, he found a stairwell entrance, but there was no way the cart was going down the stairs. He looked at the figure on it. The pulsing and undulating had finished, and a small boy lay there, maybe 5 or 6 years old, given the size of him. He remained curled in the fetal position, and was the reddish-pink color of a newborn, but the moaning had subsided into a mild whimper. A closer look at the boy's face made Alain's legs go wobbly. It was the face he saw every time his mother took out the photo album. It was the face in all the pictures his dad had taken with the Kodak Brownie when Alain was a boy. Now it was on this thing, on the table, and somehow Alain had given birth to it by cesarean section. The thought of cesarean section made his legs go even more wobbly. They'd just cut a big hole under his ribcage, reached in and tore something out of him. Yet here he was on a dead run through the hallway with a cart careening ahead of him. He felt his abdomen, expecting to find the big bloody wound. But it was smooth and dry. No sign he'd ever been opened up. His head felt like a rocket about to blast off from his body, and without its support he was going to topple. He shook it hard and slapped himself twice to bring the world back into focus. He was losing sight of his goal. Get the hell out of this place. Alain looked at the stairway and then at the child. Whatever it was, whoever it was, he couldn't leave it. He picked it up and the child wrapped its arms around his neck, its legs around his torso. Alain tore down the stairs, taking flights at a canter, one hand on the safety rail, one holding the boy. As he progressed downward, the numbers beside the doors counted down. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and Alain stopped. The first floor and presumably the exit were just one floor down, but the problem of clothes hadn't been forgotten. He listened at the second floor door, then opened it a crack and peeked out, getting views up and down the hallway. It was empty. Slowly, Alain crept out. 3 steps out the door, before he could even take in his surroundings, he was hit from the left by a flying tackle. He went down and the boy bounced out of his arms, skidding across the floor, while Alain struggled with his attacker. But the struggle was in vain. A second orderly joined in, and within moments, Alain was laying on his stomach, a knee on his back, feet on both hands. Straining to look to the far periphery of his vision, he could see the boy on the floor. Alain would have expected the boy to curl back up into a ball and begin moaning again. But the boy scrambled to his feet and launched himself at the men pressing Alain to the floor. Another orderly grabbed the boy and pulled him off, the boy snarling and screaming unintelligibly. As the orderly carried the boy away, he reached out. "Alain!" he screamed with the fear and rage of a child being torn from a parent. "Alain!" Boy and orderly passed through a set of swinging doors, which muffled the sound of the boy when they closed. The screams grew distant, until Alain could not hear them at all. All Alain could hear now was the cursing of the orderlies, the quiet hum of some nearby machinery, and the clop of a pair of sensible shoes approaching from directly ahead of him. The shoes moved around to his side and stopped by his head. "They're trying to take care of things," a female voice said. He felt the pain of a dull needle in the side of his neck, and everything went dark. Wait, don't go yet. Please hit like and subscribe to encourage my behavior. Knowing people are reading or listening is what keeps me going. If you can't wait for the other episodes, check out the audiobook at bounce.ws/books. That's bounce.ws/BOOKS. And please visit bulmash.com for the latest updates on the novels, podcasts, and the journey from here to Season 12. The New Heroes of Old NovelCast is read and produced by Greg Bulmash and distributed by Bulmash Media, LLC. Copyright 2026 by Greg Bulmash. Music is from the YouTube audio library. The opening music is Jungle by Akash Gandhi. The closing music is Better by Anno Domini Beats. Thanks for listening, and remember to come back soon.